Welcome to the Belonging Project podcast. This is Fiorenza and I'm your host. The purpose of this podcast is to bring voices together to talk about belonging. Through inspiring, real-life conversations, we explore how belonging can show up in so many different ways, what it feels like to belong, and the impact of truly belonging. Each episode will offer you inspiration and practical strategies to find your true voice in your life and as a leader. Let's dive in. Hi, and welcome to the Belonging Project podcast. Today, I'm with Tim Mart. I'm very excited to have this conversation. I've known Tim for, I believe, about 4 years now.
Yeah.
And yeah, of course, time flies as always. And Tim is the co-founder of Know You More, which is a coaching platform. And I'm really excited to have this conversation with Tim today. Hi, Tim. How are you?
I'm good. Nice to see you. Thank you for having me. And thanks for bringing up that when we met, actually 4 years ago, I remember I did a LinkedIn post, I think, after our very conversation, or a real sense of purpose that came out of that conversation that we had together. And so, thanks for bringing that up. And yeah, that memory, comes back nicely. So yes, 4 years later, here we are.
Here we are talking about belonging. Perhaps we could get started with a little bit about you, perhaps your journey. You're the co-founder of an amazing coaching platform. You're based in Scotland. Would love to know a little bit more about that, if that's okay.
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. So Know You More as an organization, we're 8 years old now. We started out, we're a social enterprise, and we started out the real mission on how do we make coaching available and accessible to young people. So myself and my co-founder Shirag, we met serendipitously on our coaching training course. We'd never met before, and we had started having a conversation about this age group and about technology. And we kind of connected straight away on it, both probably quite entrepreneurial, and then kind of took it from there. What was quite interesting, I think, at that time, I was in my mid-30s. I had been working in corporate life for best part of 15 years in financial services. And I had actually gone in to do my own coaching certification off the back of working with the coaches is very common the case, right? So, and it was through that experience, I think, that self-understanding, that self-knowledge at sort of 35, 36, where, it kind of changed the direction for me. I guess thinking about the word in this podcast, belonging, it was that kind of development of belonging myself and my purpose and where I wanted to expend my energy. And really sort of set a fire there. And I think just after the first session, the first workshop, I decided that was it. Corporate life was no longer for me. I'm going to go and do something in regards to coaching and supporting kind of young adults. That, I guess, a connection to that's quite a personal story. So but it didn't actually, at the time when this happened, this wasn't some moment of inspiration where I was like, this was my past and now I want to do this. It's actually a couple of years later that this kind of came out. As I had a relative kind of challenging early adulthood myself. I was kind of lacking in direction. My father had passed away quite early on. It wasn't a great time. And having gone through that kind of coaching experience at 35, then kind of wondered, well, what difference would that have made if I'd have had this earlier on? If I'd had this space, this opportunity to understand myself more, what was really important to me, where I wanted to go. I had the confidence to do it as well, because as a young adult, all these things like confidence and self-belief, still so much learning about yourself and the world. So that's been inspiration really for what we do.
Yeah. And perhaps just to pause there a second, because there are a few initiatives that Know You More is involved in and has been involved in that relate to coaching young adults, which is probably not mainstream yet, I would say. career counseling, yes, when you're at university, some sorts, but even that is not necessarily happening for everyone, I think. Yeah, so I guess there was perhaps a need that you may have had identified based on your personal story, and then kind of offering that to the next young adult generation.
Yeah, that was the hypothesis. It's funny, I was scrolling through my Instagram yesterday and looking at some of the images from way back from when we started, and one of them is a clipboard, and on it is like a load of post-it notes. And on those post-it notes, it asks people about what their considerations were for their life after university. And I remember using this clipboard and standing at Edinburgh University outside, just talking to students as they walk past and just having this kind of conversation with them. What were your thoughts around, your future and what you're going to do? And I remember kind of speaking to the first years, and they were, freshers. They were kind of really excited to be there. Like, I'm away from home. Like, I'm not even thinking about what's going on in the future after this. Speaking to those in the second year started to get more serious, and they were considering things. They were thinking about what they'd chosen. So, I've chosen law because that was a good direction to go down. But now I'm in the second year. I'm not quite sure if it's for me. And so I'm now taking other things as a kind of just in case. And then as you kind of got to the third year, there's this real sense of anxiety about answering that question. That the clock was ticking, peers had clarity about where they were going to go, and yet they didn't have a real sense of that. So that, I guess, those conversations that we're having really kind of validated this premise that young adults, that kind of 18 to 25 group, could really support with having someone out with their parents, out with their professors and their tutors, whose just agenda was just just them, so that they could be equipped, I guess, with those skills to be able to take control of their future. And in fact, I think the early days, Know You More branding was all, it's your future, take control. That was the focus. So yeah, that was the hypothesis, and then we went out and tested that, and yeah, we've supported, which is now called Level Up. Supported thousands of young adults since.
And coming back on something else you've mentioned, so you transition out of the corporate space, working in corporate, into entrepreneurship, really, with Chirag, the Know You More co-founder, your co-founder.
Yeah.
I'm curious how that was for you. I mean, I'm sure it's okay. My guess is it may have been a little bit of an emotional roller coaster at times. What was the impact of it in your sense of belonging with your work?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think as I came out of, as I'm in my early 20s, and as I say, things hadn't been quite straightforward for me in that kind of time. I was really just trying to get the basics right, get a job, get a house. I'd been playing in a kind of rock band sort of in my early 90s. It was really time to kind of sharpen up and do, I guess, what society expects of you. And I had done that, and I'd been successful in that in working in my career within kind of financial services. I felt I was successful, and I fit on a pathway kind of being fast tracked through. But as I came to the end of that, I had that kind of realization of my own destiny being in the hands of others. It was others in this organization that would decide whether I would go in that direction or that direction. And there's a lack of agency there. So to your question, when I kind of made that decision, the sense of purpose, the energy, the excitement, which I'm sure a lot of people talk about when they're starting something up, and that entrepreneurship, side of things kicks in, was really clear for me. The fact that it connected to the kind of social purpose of supporting young adults and really helping them. Also, I think developed a sense of resilience. The story of starting in 2015 to where we are today, right? Like, it's not as whilst it's been successful, that's a roller coaster that's in that. But so in those moments where you're down and you're dipped down, that sense of purpose, that sense of I think really provide resilience to kind of keep on going. And I think that I say purpose over that's belonging for me as well. There's real clarity there in terms of where I want to take my my direction. But it wasn't easy, and I think one of the other challenges is you change your life almost completely. I didn't make the best choice. I didn't have a big pot of savings to go and live off of for a year. So it meant that our family would have to change how it lived a little bit from a lifestyle perspective, and I had two young children to kind of look after as well. So it wasn't as straightforward as let's just go and do this and make it happen and get lots of seed funding and everything else. We bootstrapped, and when I say bootstrapped, that applies both to the business and in personal life. To make that happen. So whilst there was you've got this paradox then of this real sense of purpose, this real sense of identity, and then at the other side of that, a reality which is, text messages coming through saying that you're about to enter your overdraft, and trying to balance those things up and constantly trying to equate, am I doing the right thing here? Like, is this the right thing to do? And I remember being on a walk with my wife, and we were walking through this park here locally, and I said, I feel really bad. I said, I feel like, I'm putting you guys through this and we're changing our lifestyles and everything else. And she said to me, I would rather have you do this and go down this path and it be this way, and you be happy on a Sunday night instead of being, miserable, looking forward to the kind of Monday ahead, than, with all of that combined. And then she just asked me one question. She said, well, Tim, do you back yourself? And I said, yeah, I do back myself. And it's a really pivotal moment, because I think that for me, knowing I had her belief in me as well, and also that sense of purpose, those two together, really kind of cemented that sense of belonging, and that resilience to kind of keep going.
Absolutely. And it is quite a juggle to start such a huge new professional chapter and have young children.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And yeah, I remember it well, because I became a stay-at-home dad, and this was beautiful for me. Like, this was everything for me, and taking the kids to nursery and everything that goes with that, and my wife worked full time, so it's the juggle is real, Fiorenza. The juggle is real, right?
Yes, definitely, definitely. And so it's been 8 years
Yeah.
that you've founded Know You More. How would you say things feel at the moment compared to when you started 8 years ago?
Grounded. Yeah,
Mm.
I would say things are really grounded now. The challenge that we had with offering coaching to young people was obviously, the access point was that it'd have to be free, because they wouldn't be able to afford it, and we had to find ways and means to make that happen. And so we pivoted our model, I guess, to be able to then support organizations with coaching. We'd found a way to help them better manage their coaching, and that became, our commercial offer. And then that would allow us then to fund the resources that then go into the coaching for young people for free. We call that our, jokingly, that kind of Robin Hood model. But it's always been like a balancing act, because you have to move from being founders to then building a team to then, responsibilities, finding that balance between making sure the business is sustainable as a social enterprise. And I think that's something that a lot of social enterprises and charities, is the revenue streams. How do we kind of keep this going, and relying on grant funding and those kind of things? We had to make this self-sustainable. It had to exist within that model by itself, and so constantly trying to find that balance of the two. And as I say, kind of going from that journey of being a few of us to now being a team, where I would say now this year, yeah, I would say really grounded. Got a really strong team, real clarity, identity, got brilliant clients, doing kind of meaningful work, incredible coaches that work alongside us as well. And it feels as a real nice, there's been a little bit of change this year, and I've called it kind of, relaying the foundation stones of kind of Know You More. But I would say grounded is where we are just now, and kind of really ready to like springboard, and go again.
I know that over the past few months, you've been on a personal journey, exploration, perhaps. I'm curious if this space of being grounded professionally opened a door or just kind of let those reflections come through.
So at the end of last year, I was, diagnosed with adult ADHD. And it had been a couple of years of journey to that point. It's not easy to make that decision as to whether you want to go for a diagnosis or not, but it was one that I decided to take, and yeah, lots of things made sense, and within all of that, there you go through a variety of emotions, I guess, with thinking about the 20 odd years past, and that kind of, again, if someone who talks here a lot about self-understanding and self-knowledge, something that's critical of that piece of knowledge and how that might have changed that period, specifically around early adulthood, if I use that as one space, and having maybe known at that time that was that I was neurodiverse, yeah, the difference that might have made. But the thing to celebrate, of course, is everything that's achieved despite that. I was out with another coach, John Johnston, playing. He took me for a game of golf. I used the word game very loosely. I haven't played golf for a very, very long time. And we talked about like the kind of, he said he picked up a Hallmark card once or something that said on it, if and it's really cheesy, but you have to love it. And it said, if every decision I've made has led to this moment with you now, then I've got no regrets. And I think that kind of sort of sums up as like, if everything that, with my neurodiverse has led to where I am now, having this conversation with you, being grounded, I can't have any regrets with that. But the difference that it's made over the past 6 months has been seismic in terms of the ability to know myself, that building that sense of belonging, self-belonging, really understanding who you are, why your brain operates in a certain way, and then making, I want to say positive, but almost kind of the necessary, changes, and understanding concepts like masking, where you spent a lot of your life, showing up as society expects you to be, versus who you really are, and the energy that drains from you, and the lack of belonging that exists there, because people don't really get to know the real you. They get to know the person you're putting in front of them as you try to fit in with them. So learning about concepts like that has been extraordinary. What it's done for my mental health and my physical health as well. Knowing learning about my kind of relationship with things like food and exercise, and has been incredible. And yes, a really critical piece of self-knowledge. And the inspiration to do it was less so when I went to the GP initially. The GP will say would say, "Oh, you're on a 2-year journey," which sounds, for someone with ADHD, that sounds like a nightmare. But I kind of thought, well, I must be quite well functioning because, I've got a family, I've got kids, I've built a business, these things are, I must be okay to a certain, I must be able to function to a certain degree. And then going through quite a dark winter, and the seasonality of that comes with it. There was a depression that came with it. But then what really struck me was, if this is the case, Tim, and the value in diagnosis is for you, but it's also for your kids. So it's understanding, as it is kind of hereditary, how they could be impacted, both as me as a father and my behaviours, but also then should they also live with it as should they also be neurodiverse, should I say, in terms of getting the language right. Still working out the language. And again, it kind of goes full circle. If I start to talk about myself, about that time in early adulthood and the challenge that I faced there, much of what I've done with Know You More is around my children, so that they would have, should they go through something similar, they would have that kind of support to be present for them in that moment. Because you can't coach your kids, as you know, Fiorenza, you can't coach your kids, right? It's got to be kind of external. And then with that kind of premise in mind, of course, if there's a neurodiverse lens there as well, and that kind of understanding, then I get, there's that kind of putting these things in place so that they may not have to, and these things would be present for them, and that self-understanding would be present for them. So yes, those were the kind of the inspiration and the reflection, and like you say, it created that sense of groundedness, I think, in all of this. So yeah, thank you for asking that.
And perhaps coming back on two points you made. The first one around masking and how much it is something that we all do to different extents, of course. Trying to fit in, of course, not always, but there are so many occasions where we do try so hard to fit in, match expectations of others. How has it changed for you since you've had the diagnostic?
Mm.
How has it changed?
So I think personally, it's changed. There's like I said, better kind of understanding, a better kind of connection there. I I've been working with a coach actually, ADHD affirmative coach, and that's been really wonderful in understanding, as I say, the context of ADHD. And she's been really been helping me with that sense of belonging. When I
Mhm.
first found out about it, I didn't want to talk about it. I was like, it felt like deficit, like it was that it was a problem. And then the more it sat with me, the more I understand the strengths that sit within it for me that have helped me do what I do now. My ability to see things, problem solve things differently. My creativity, the energy that comes with it, it's probably keeps in balance with the deficits that come with it. But that sense of kind of she's done a lot of work with me. We've been listening to kind of Brené Brown books, of course, around belonging, and getting that sense of understanding to a point where I came out and I spoke about it, and it was a real moment for me to kind of take off the mask. One of my, I think, a space I don't particularly enjoy, has been a bit of a nemesis for me, has almost been kind of LinkedIn, which feels like a place where there's a lot of masking that kind of goes on because we all show up with our, as is very natural, our kind of professional persona in that space. And so I shared it, I kind of shared it in there. And I got a really kind of beautiful response. And off the back of sharing it in there, I then got lots of people messaging me. I've seen people post like this in the past, and they put something out quite personally, and then the next day they say, "Oh, thank you for the lovely messages." And I thought, "Oh, is there, is that just a continuation of this story?" But actually, I've received so many messages, and that was wonderful, and it was great to be able to support. But I felt uncomfortable. I felt a sense of, am I okay being Tim, the guy that's got ADHD, and that being that kind of forming that part of my identity, as kind of how I'm known. So again, been working on that, and how do you kind of bring those two things together, and that's, this whole sense of inner belonging, so belonging in oneself is so important, and trying to bring those two, like jigsaw pieces, to click together. So it takes work and it takes time. So I think personally, that's, doing that work has really helped. Doing the internal work has really helped. I think how it's then affected me more kind of outwardly is interesting as well. So as I say, we've got a team of 10 here, and creating an environment and an organization around belonging is in the little things, I think. And we get a lot of people that want to work with us for our mission, for our brand, for what we do. And it's like how in these spaces, as I look out to the kind of office here, we support with that, building that kind of sense of belonging. And it's little things like we had a wonderful new joiner called Cheryl. She's into a certain type of music. It's like, look, I just want you to show up as you are. And if you want to put on Slipknot on the thing, then you put stuff on. Like that's, we have to kind of show up as we are here. And we were talking a lot about kind of communication and social media, and and going out because of what we do is incredibly human, right? Coaching is so human. It's two people in conversation, and how as an organization that it's important, and that we're human, that people see the faces of what we do. That's not often comfortable for people, especially in a work environment. They're expected maybe to show up in a certain way and be on brand. And having conversation with the team around, look, firstly, it's not mandatory. If you want to talk about what you do, that's absolutely fine. But talk about the things that are important to you, that you're passionate about, the things that you love, and don't tag no you more in it. Just show up as you are. And I've seen so many posts on places like things like LinkedIn where people say, "Oh, you shouldn't be posting this, and you shouldn't be posting this," and it's, "Oh, that's too Facebook," and it's like,
That's so frustrating when I come across posts like this.
it's like, just be who you are. Of course, there's extremes in which, in terms of things that would be correct and appropriate to say, there's boundaries within all of that. I think that we all understand. Actually, show up and be you. And yeah, trying to nurture that, I think, in the work, but bringing people, getting them involved in decision making, from things like project decisions, direction decisions, financial decisions. This is where we are. If we want to do this, this would have to go. Those kind of things. It's trying to create that sense of, trying to create that sense of connection and belonging in the organisation. I think that's become, as part of this now, is, as I say, since the kind of internal work, really, really important to me, and know you more as well as a team. So, yeah, I think those two areas I would say, personally, and then also within the team as well.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. And it's really, I kind of get a sense of warmth when I hear about workplaces, right, that do out loud welcome everyone to be themselves and talk about whatever they want to talk about, or not, to really embrace that sense of freedom, and you can be whatever you want. And I do really believe that when we are given that space and freedom, we probably get to do our best work. The sense of respect that we get out of that, perhaps belonging with time as well, is just so conducive to being productive and motivated, and enjoying more what we do, right?
I mean, you're absolutely right. I mean, even the word at the end, the enjoyment. How much of your day do you want to be enjoying? And agency, I think, comes up for me. I think you just kind of described that sense of freedom, that agency. You're contributing. You're part of something you want to be part of. You have choice. I love the way you said that the word freedom is in our values. Actually, is around freedom. And whilst I talk about things about being able to choose what music you want to put on the radio, that may seem small, but there's things like designing what your workday looks like. Like if you're at your best at like 5 a.m. in the morning, and that's what works for you, and it's that sense of agency is to allow, as you said there, to allow you to be productive, to do your best work, to do the work that you want to do and that you enjoy. It's in those little things. I think I said it before. I think belonging is made up of so many little things that can kind of come together to support with that.
Yeah, for sure. And I really think that if we have passion, if we're passionate about what we do, that is so important, and it does help. But the environment as well is so important. I have a friend who is a vet, and she is, a completely different space than our space, but she's passionate about, her profession, what she does, the content of it, right? However, her work environment at this point in time isn't isn't really good, right?
Mm,
Isn't really a space where she can thrive, personally or professionally.
mm,
And that does put a shadow, even if you love, what you do and what you trained for. It just changes everything, and probably how you wake up in the morning and how you feel when you end your day. How old are your children right now?
14. Ollie's 14, and Isla is 10.
All right. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So how do you talk to them about ADHD, your diagnostic, and your journey towards it?
I think the first thing is exactly that. It's talk, is to have conversations and explore these things. There'll be concepts, of course, that will be unfamiliar, or they do or don't kind of understand. So, and just be open to kind of having those kind of conversations. I have one of my children is very conversational and will, ask questions, inquire, super curious, etc. And I'll have, they're both very different. I'll have another that will go, okay. and and it's about still just trying to create those, going back to a word you just used a second ago, environments, to then be curious about what they're feeling, be curious about the questions that they have, be mindful, I guess, of what you're kind of projecting as well. And then we've had some kind of, and through that we've had some kind of fun language that's come into into the household as well. So we talk about spoons. So it's my way of explaining to Isla was, think of it this way, as when it comes to executive functioning and capacity, that I have 15 spoons a day. And every time I do something, so I'll do a podcast and it will take 3 spoons, or I'll do the dishwasher and it'll take a spoon. Every time I do something, it will take away a spoon. And by the time you get to 0 spoons, that's your capacity is done. So we bring that language in. So you often hear maybe people say, I'm out of spoons, kids are tired, they've got no capacity. So it's, I guess bringing in some of those kind of monkeys came into it as well, but that's another addition to the story. I won't go to that one, but so spoons and monkeys, and it's a good way for them to kind of understand, how I experience things, and for us to kind of talk about it, and of course for them to notice in themselves what's happening with things like spoons, and talk about it in that way. It's been sort of 6 months or so they're constantly kind of checking in. So it's not been quite a long period of time, and I'm no doubt that I've seen a shift or a change in all of that. One thing that really strikes me off the back of it, I think, with the children is them. It's a theme. This is a DNA through this whole conversation, is about them finding that belonging in themselves. I think with structures and frameworks like education, family expectations, we can send kids down a path that they may not choose to go down. And so for me, it's about making sure that they've got that sense of that kind of sense of belonging in what they do, following their interests and their passions, and really kind of fueling them is strengths. And again, I've got 2 very different children. I've got Isla, who's like, oh my Lord, so creative, so wonderful with the things that she creates, and Oliver is very kind of football focused. He wants to play football, and very kind of where she has a portfolio of things. That's my interest, and spends all his time there. So it's really lovely to kind of appreciate the diversity and where they kind of place their energies. So, and they're in those, Oliver's very much in those, those teenage years now. He's got decisions to make. That his education has taken him to a place where you need to make decisions about what you want to do in the future, but at the same time, trying for him to hold that curiosity and that openness. There's no rush. You don't have to be ready for everything by 22. When you come out of university, should that be the path that you go down to? My own journey, I guess illustrates that 35, I still had no clue. and a lot of people, I think, maybe that they call that kind of going into your second careers. But so just hold that openness and allow that to come, follow those interests, develop those strengths, and hold that kind of openness to it all, curiosity to it all. I found my voice very quiet there, very whispery, but belonging.
I love that. It really sounds like you're modeling a great deal of how to find our own belonging, right? And how perhaps our interest can serve you in that way. How would you define belonging, Tim? And I know it's a broad question, and everyone has their own definition, but it's so amazing to hear everyone's definition of it.
For me personally, I think it's a feeling. I think that belonging is an experience, and with that, I think I can name sort of other attributes to it, like a sense of peace, a sense of acceptance. There is a belonging. There's a sense of abundance and possibility in belonging. There's a safety, a psychological safety in there. Actually, as I describe that now, it feels like almost I'm putting these things into a bowl and you're kind of mixing it together, so it's to create that kind of experience when you bite into it. So I think for me, belonging is an experience, is a feeling made up of all these kind of different aspects, this combination, I guess I said before, of the little things that come together. That's a great question. I could sit here probably for about an hour and and talk to that, but that's a really, really good question. But a feeling and experience.
Yeah. And what elements do you need perhaps to experience, to feel belonging if you're in a new situation, new environment, new group?
As you're saying that, the word that came up was trust. As we talk about in coaching, right? Trust the coach, trust the coachee, trust the process. I think there's something about trusting that trust in yourself, and why you're there. I think that trust, having that trust and psychological safety with other people, I think is really important when it comes to belonging. Honest, I mean, I'm trying not to be too cliche, but it feels like that kind of ability to be you, to be honest, and sort of show up as your sort of authentic self. it sounds like quite a grandiose term, doesn't it? But actually, that word authentic is so commonly used when you talk about these things. But yeah, to be able to be authentic and show up as you. And as you mentioned earlier, environment, so important, that the space you're working into, that environment that enables you to do that's an enabler. And that the trust and the safety, exists there too. Does that answer your question?
It
Wonderful.
does. It does. Do you remember the first time, or perhaps one of the first times, that you really felt that you belonged?
This won't be the first time, but it might be a significant one. Is that okay? Would it be okay to share that?
Absolutely.
It's quite a marquee moment, actually. I was in Stirling in high street coffee shop. I won't say the name, others are available. And I was having a meeting actually with one of my colleagues here at Know You More. And it was just a planned kind of one-to-one check-in over a coffee. And we started to talk about neurodiversity. And we must have spoken for 2 hours, 2.5 hours. And it felt like, in the cinema, and sometimes we're in a film and two people are sat there, but the whole world is kind of just rushing past in high speed motion around them, fast forwarded. We were just kind of sat there still. And there was so many moments of, oh, that's that. And you do that too. And that's not common. And the description of that, the description I used for that meeting, for that conversation was, I felt seen. It was one of the first times I had felt seen and understood. And I just remember the burst of energy inside me, the fire inside me that came up off the back of that, to go, wow, like that, it's almost the counterpart to the not fitting in. I went to 11 schools when I was a kid. So I know what it's like to be, we moved a lot. I know what it's like to be the new boy and the one, seeking, trying to make a good impression and seeking acceptance from peers. So I know that feeling really, really well. So to feel the opposite of that and feel seen and understood and fitting in at a level that I just wasn't ready for was so powerful. So I would use that experience.
That's wonderful. Yeah. Thank you, Tim. I appreciate your answers to all of my questions that made me
Great
get a
questions.
little bit intrusive at time. Thank you so much, Tim, for your
Thank you.
for your answers, your vulnerability, and bringing your unique perspective to the conversation. You can follow the podcast on LinkedIn at the Belonging Project Podcast. You can also hit subscribe and stay up to date with our episodes. And do feel free to get in touch with me on coaching@fiorenzarossini.com. Thank you again, and see you next time.